I first acquired HMS Monarch a long time ago. It's a Tier 7 freemium British battleship in the sense that you can get it for free in the store for 750,000 global XP. It's a ship that I bought, I think, after it first debuted, and this might have been before I was a CC. At the time when I got it, I thought the thing was pretty mediocre at best, although I know there are some people out there who sing the praises of this ship or did sing the praises of this ship before this most recent update, because in this most recent update, it got a buff, and a pretty significant one. We should go over what the buff was real quick. The Monarch is getting her B hull applied according to the patch notes, and that means the ship HP is increased from 53.9k to 60.5k. Rudder shift time gets a massive buff from 21 seconds to 15. And then the fire resistance multiplier is improved, meaning there's less of a chance to start a fire on this thing, and it got some improved anti aircraft firepower. All in all, maybe not the biggest buff. It's mostly geared toward survivability. Nothing about the guns in particular was changed, but I realized when I played this game, and this is the first game I've played since the buff, I realized that I must have been sleeping on these guns. The story of the Monarch, or the gimmick, is that the AP is supposed to be better than the HE, whereas with most British battleships, the HE is the best shell. But in this case, well, take a look at that Tirpitz. That's a Citadel plus 5 penetrations for 23,000 damage. As soon as I got this salvo, I was like, huh, I must have been sleeping on this AP because it's actually pretty good. And we're going to deal a tremendous amount of damage throughout the course of this game with the Monarch's AP. I suppose that we should probably talk a little bit more in detail about the ship because I don't know that I've ever featured this on my channel before. I think I just thought it was too mediocre, but now my opinion has been revised. Of course, this is only one sample. More investigation is needed, but so far, I think this thing is pretty good. Just ask the Tirpitz what he thinks about the efficacy of the AP. In any case, we know that it's got 60.5k hit points. It's got 22% torpedo damage reduction, which isn't that great. And the hull is more or less the King George hull, so it comes with the same benefit where the Citadel is completely underwater and totally inaccessible, which should mean that this ship is quite tanky compared to some other battleships with more accessible citadels. I don't think if you shoot at a Monarch, you'll be hitting the Citadel all that often, if ever, because it really is buried underwater. The guns, though, are not quite the same as the King George. There are 9 of them rather than, I think, King George has 10, and they are 381mm guns, or 15-inch, whereas the King George, I think, has 14-inch guns. Reload time is 22.5 seconds. The armor piercing with gyrating drill bits on the commander build does a maximum AP damage of 13,090, which is pretty good. HE characteristics are not terrible, though. Maximum shell damage is 6,300 and fire chance is 35%. AA defenses, which were apparently improved, don't look all that impressive to me, and I don't think they're worth really going over. There is a carrier in this game, but the AA is not going to make any kind of difference. The speed, even with gyrating drill bits, is not bad. 26 knots. It's probably better if you don't run that skill, and maybe I'll change the build around and see how it works. And then the rudder shift is an astounding 12.7 seconds with this build, which is fantastic for a battleship. Concealment with the concealment mod and Kondo as one of the inspirations is 12.3 kilometers, which is quite stealthy. And then there's one other gimmick that the ship enjoys, and you might sort of notice it just by looking at the number of consumables. There are only 2 heals at base, and I'm actually using Cunningham as the commander on this build, so we don't get any extra heals. The reason there are 2 at base is because these are super heals. They restore a maximum of 1,209 HP per second, and they tick for 17 seconds, which can theoretically net you about half of the ship's HP. And there, by the way, is our first kill of the game. 2 citadels against that cruiser. We're up to 73,000 damage already, and only 5 minutes have elapsed. Unfortunately, this game is not going to go well for our team. You can see we've already lost 1 battleship, and we're going to be losing more. But that's okay. Our goal in playing this ship was just to see how good it was, and I think we achieved this goal. By the end of the battle, you'll see how much damage we rack up using really only the AP. I don't think I switched to HE at all. I might once, but at the moment, my goal is just to put this battleship in a place on the map where I can access as many broadsides as possible. So initially I was coming over here. It looks like we've got access to the Bismarck's broadside. We did take a shot at him, but he started moving forward. And of course, we know the Fletcher is in the Bravo cap. He was just spotted in that gap there. So we aren't going to continue on this way because obviously torpedoes are going to come through that gap, and we don't want to be eating any of those. We're still at more or less full HP, and hopefully we'll be able to tank a little bit of damage. But my teammates' positions, not exactly great. We've got a battleship kiting away from the Bismarck and Zeton near our spawn. They're headed toward our CV, who I assume they'll pick up. I thought this Hipper was about to come out and try to YOLO me with his torps, which I was welcoming, because if he does come out, he'd probably be broadside here. But it turns out he's beached himself on the island. He's not going to come out at all. He sent torpedoes instead at the friendly Brandenburg, who eats a good deal of them and is probably well on his way back to port. But then the Lexington is spotted, so obviously we're going to take shots at that. If we can eliminate the CV, then that'll probably be helpful to our team, although it does look like our CV is probably going to end up going down. I don't know for sure, but the Zeton and the Bismarck did succeed in sinking the enemy battleship that was near our friendly CV, and he's spotted by the enemy CV's plane, so I don't think he's too much longer for this world. Unfortunately, this magical AP, which was able to deal so much damage to the Tirpitz by hitting its citadel, is for whatever reason finding it difficult to find the citadel of the Lexington, and I don't know how much longer we can concentrate on that guy with the Fletcher in sight and this Ragnarok coming around the corner broadside. We shoot at the Ragnarok, who is more or less a Nagato, which means he has no armor and can barely angle against us. And if not for those 3 shatters, probably against his slightly angled belt armor, he might have been dev-struck there, but we do about 20k, so he's well on his way back to port. Keeping the AP chambered, and I just recalled we are going to switch to HE now. We were confident that that salvo would take out the Ragnarok. Unfortunately, it does not, but we did switch to the high explosive so that maybe we could get some shells on the Fletcher. Luckily, our reload time is so quick that it almost doesn't matter, and we'll get a taste of what the HE can do to a battleship that it can pen. Obviously, we'd rather be shooting AP here, and if we did, I think the Ragnarok would be sunk. But the HE does a fair amount of damage at 8k, and it starts a fire that I don't think the Ragnarok is able to extinguish. So I guess that fire is going to burn for a while. But as you can see, my entire team is more or less dead at this point. We've got 1 battleship left along with us, and he's got no HP. He's going to come out here and probably perish to the guns of the other enemy battleships, but we net the high caliber medal there, and we're up to 140-something thousand damage done. Ragnarok still is not deceased, probably because we could only get 1 gun on him, but there are the other 2, and that should finally take care of this guy. Yes, he goes down for our 2nd kill. Still about 4 enemy battleships left alive, the Fletcher and the CV. Our last remaining battleship goes down. We've got a cruiser in front of us that is running away and about to hide behind the island. And our destroyer is lurking around in the enemy spawn, probably trying to chase the CV, although he is sort of failing in that endeavor. He is keeping the Tirpitz and the other battleships spotted for the moment, though, which is good for us. CV, unfortunately, is spotting us, allowing all of these guys to focus on us. And you can see just how quickly our HP begins to melt. But we do have the benefit of that super heal. It's going to be off cooldown in about 20 seconds or so. So maybe we'll be able to gain a little bit more HP and deal a little bit more damage to these guys. Basically, I think this situation is hopeless, though, and frankly, I wasn't sure what to do at this point. Maybe I should not have done what I do next, but I did it anyway. We're going to take a shot at that Tirpitz, who is quite angled to us, but of course he is German, so he's got a tremendous amount of superstructure that these guns should be able to pen. And they are fairly accurate, so we do get good results there. Not quite enough to take out the Tirpitz, but one more salvo should do it. Think we're a little bit too broadside to these guys, but remember what I said about the Citadel being completely inaccessible. Even if we are too broadside and their AP shells hit, they're probably not going to hit the Citadel. At most, they'll just do full penetration damage, which, that can be a lot, but it's not critical like a Citadel is. And there we take the Tirpitz down for our third kill of the game. Note that only 4 enemy ships have been sunk thus far, and we are responsible for 75% of that. So this is a good ship, no doubt about it. 174,000 damage done, and we're still not finished. Bismarck really wants to donate some more HP to increase our damage numbers, and he does so graciously. Thank you, Bismarck. We're up to 190k now, but unfortunately somebody stuck an island here, which we're going to hit. Beach ourselves with only 1100 HP left, and I thought that maybe the Zeton was AFK. Turns out he is not AFK. He's just sitting still there for some reason and not shooting at us. So we're going to get the rear turret on target and swing the front turret around, get the shot off, but of course we go down. Still, the shot is in the air, so it is going to connect and deal just a tiny bit more damage, bringing our total up to 198,000 or nearly 200k. Obviously not enough to win this game. You do need some cooperation from the blue team in order for that to happen, and we simply did not get that. So we're going to lose this terribly in a tragedy. Our Mogami is still hanging around here, I guess. He might be able to sink the Tirpitz as a bit of a consolation prize, but ultimately, it's not going to mean anything. The Monarch, though, think it's a pretty interesting boat. I actually enjoy it. I don't know why I thought it was mediocre to begin with, because again, they haven't done anything to change the gun characteristics. They've just given it a survivability buff by adding the, quote, B hull. And I think the reason that is because Monarch is actually in the tech line on PC. It follows the King George and precedes the Lion on the British tech tree line, and of course that line ends with the Conqueror at tier 10. Here it's a premium, though, where the Vanguard, which is a premium on PC, is our tech line. So I guess when it was initially in the game, it only had the A hull. Now it has the improved B hull, and I think it's a pretty solid ship. The AP is good, as you've seen, can deal some wicked damage, and honestly, pretty fun ship to play. A little bit unfair, though, in terms of survivability due to the underwater Citadel, but hey, not quite as crazy as some of the other boats in this game. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.